Okay, so I'm gonna try to do something different. I'm using Photo Booth so you can see me on my screen, and then I can slide over to Story Bones. Close my debug window. Let's give it a shot. Anyway, welcome to Bootstrap Cinema. It's been 2 weeks, and I'm running towards the end of my weekend, so got to get my update on here. There's been some fun happening. I've been spending some time writing, which I very much so continue to enjoy. Had some fun conversations with Darce and Jefferson. I'm not going to go into that much here. There were some questions I was supposed to talk about that I don't remember now, but basically, just talking about motivation and why I even care about this, why I'm doing this. And while I don't remember the specific questions and responses, I do very much so think that it's very good to circle back to motivation and, I don't know, just kind of tap back into that original energy. I found it useful. Oh, look, there's my driver's license down there. Extra point for whoever can get my driver's license number off that tiny, tiny picture. Anyway, I think that the big thing that stands out to me this time around is the idea of central conflict in a beat. Like, what is the conflict? What is the challenge, right? And as I was getting into screenwriting early on, I kept running into that notion. Everybody's like, got to figure out what your central conflict is, and blah blah blah. And that's how it felt. Like I was like, okay, like what does that mean? I don't quite get it. And I'm not necessarily like the best student. I'm more the guy that likes to try it. And then when I'm like, I see why that doesn't work when I do it that way, and why you have this bit of wisdom. Maybe I'm kind of to the point where I'm going, okay, core conflict makes sense, central conflict makes sense. And now I'm learning that. So one thing that has really stood out to me, I'm going to switch my screen over here to Story Bones. So in Story Bones, I've got my seasons split out, and the content in a lot of these beats is actually just copied from a spreadsheet that I made long, long ago. And I've been slowly trying to convert it into this Story Bones format, and then massage it from there. I guess I like it. I like this format, and well, at the same time, it is frustrating. The tool is still quite lacking in capabilities, so that's a little bit frustrating. But I do like the format, and that's been helpful for me because it's been pushing me to use this beat format. And spending a little bit of time today, I first of all went in and I copied over my episode 102 stuff, and you'll notice everything's blank right now. That's because I just copied and pasted things from my spreadsheet that I had back in the day. So there's no beat titles, there's no filling out, and even this inciting incident isn't really necessarily even close to correct because it's just a copy paste deal going on. And we can drill all the way down from the acts to the sequences to the scenes to the beats that make up the scene. And this is where my first big this is interesting moment came from, because I'm copying this stuff over from what I thought was a breakdown of my my script, my plan for the script, right? And I think it's pretty obvious if you're looking here. Like, Sage asks Walker to back her. I thought that was a beat. Like, that's not a beat. Is that even an inciting incident? Sage asks Walker to back her. It could be an inciting incident. So maybe it works there, but this was literally my entire beat. There's no progressive complication, Walker doesn't go, I won't back you because you did that thing to me last week, or I don't believe your position, so I can't back you. There's nothing, no pushback, no challenge for Sage to overcome and trying to get Walker to back her. So there's literally zero progressive complication. What is the crisis question? Maybe Walker has the crisis. Will Walker back Sage. But it looks like we're kind of focused more on Sage here. I don't know. Her name is first, so it's kind of unclear. Like, is this really is Walker really the central character in this beat, or is it Sage? I don't know. Will Walker back Sage or not? Well, maybe I could call that a crisis question, but it's literally got no interest to me because I don't know anything about what's going on, and yeah, so I don't really feel any crisis. I could ask a question, but I don't feel any crisis. Climax? Well, I guess somewhere in my breakdown, maybe it comes later. Let's see here. Family, chaos, getting ready for church. Meh. Doesn't even look like I ever answered the question. Does Sage get Walker to back her? I don't know. So I literally don't know the climax. And then you want to talk about resolution, like what kind came out of that experience? How were they different after this climax? I really never even came close to this thing. So that's really interesting. It's so weird it like freezes. And I gotta take this sproutly jacket off. Okay. All of a sudden I'm really hot. No, I mean like temperature wise. So I go back and look at that stuff and I'm like, oh my lands, like that's bad. Like that's not even student work. That's like you literally don't even have the faintest inkling of what you're supposed to do. And that's kind of true. What I captured does not capture the faintest inkling, but I think that's what's interesting for me to remember as I go through this. And my next step is going to be on that episode 2 thing. I want to start at the top, work my way down, refining the beats and building them out, and all that stuff is going to get refactored and moved. But the point is, when I wrote that, I didn't write it because I thought, ooh, I have this crappy story that is literally as boring as can be and I want to tell it. That wasn't what happened. What happened was I had this story in my head and I'm like, oh, this is a great story. This is good stuff. Like, I had energy when I was writing these things. The problem isn't what was in my head. The problem was, like that little bug on my head right there. The problem was that it didn't end up on the page. I literally just completely forgot why my story was compelling, and maybe it'll come back to me as I work through it. Quite possibly it won't, and I'll just have to make something new up, and that's okay. It's a good exercise, and it'll probably be better the second time. And even if I do remember it, it'll probably almost certainly get refined multiple times before I get there. But wow, like, just think about the power of the tool in context of it's not a bad story. It's just how do you get the goodness that's in your head onto the page so you can review it and recreate that experience in your head again in the future so other people can read it and hopefully recreate that experience in their head. Like, ultimately, it's about being able to capture the magic of it. And to me, these beat structures have been gold, like really amazing. So I just copied all these season 1, episode 2 bits across from my spreadsheet, which I don't know where that is, but there's an episode previous to this that had me doing some of that work, and it was good stuff. I mean, it helped me think through things, but it was so far from what it needed to be. I have no doubt that a year from now, when I look back on the work I've done today, I'm gonna have the exact same response. Like, wow, like there was so much I didn't know. If I keep going. So yeah, don't stop doing what you're doing. Just keep learning at the same time. But what I did was, after I copied all that stuff over, I thought, you know what? I need to get my bigger story figured out. And I've got these, sorry, I got somebody texting me. We've got these 4 seasons outlined. Let me collapse that. You can see it here. So I've got 4 seasons outlined. One of them isn't even given a name. Only the first one has anything of a actual beat figured out. The other 3 seasons are still that good old-fashioned copy-paste thing I did from my original beat breakdown, as I called it. And then I only broke down season 1 into episodes. I've got 8 episodes here. These guys, the plus button means I can add things to it, but there's nothing actually under it already. And I thought, you know what I need to do is get the top level stuff figured out, because as I'm looking at this episode 102, I'm going, okay, there's this segue. And that's actually why I wrote episode 2, went ahead and wrote it after I wrote 1, was because I thought there's things that need to happen in episode 1 that are setting the table, or I guess the term would be setting the stage for episode 102. And unless I lean into 102, I'm not going to know what those things are. And I was right. There's like all these interplays and all that stuff, but there's interplays all the way through all of it. And there's probably this interesting balance that maybe I can eventually find between writing everything up front and writing just one episode at a time, so that you actually have some big picture. I guess I think this breakdown is that, like, if I can get a high level beat structure that works, it saves me from having to write everything up front, but I still have a pretty good idea of how the story is going to flow. So I started working through breaking down language like this here, just a big fat paragraph of things that happened, into actual beat structure. 102, I think I might have already done that one. But today I spent some time working on 103 and 104, and I am not going to say anything too lofty about what I wrote. Like, I feel like the only thing I really confidently accomplished is that I took something that was totally not beat structure and turned it into something that we can at least critique and react to as a beat. Is it the beat that it's going to be? Is it a beat that I'm even going to like? And honestly, right now, I don't even remember if I liked it today. But it probably took me 2 hours to break just these two down, just to think it through based on my concept of what happens. And this is where I want to circle back to the core conflict, because I found that with this bit of text that I'd already written, put in place, the easiest way for me to turn it into a beat was to identify what the crisis question was going to be. And once I had that, it was kind of easier to go, okay, now that I know what the crisis question is, sometimes I'd actually work forward from there and go like, okay, and here's the climax, here's the conclusion. Sometimes I would already know the resolution or have an idea about it. Sometimes I wouldn't have a clue. And then from that, I had this very good idea of, okay, I know where we end up. Where does the story start? And what are all the progressive complications that go in between? And I wasn't just refactoring text. I was actually realizing, okay, there's stuff that's missing here. There's stuff that doesn't make sense. So I was already putting a little creativity into a little pizzazz, I guess, is how you say it, into trying to make the progressive complication a little more interesting, and the beat overall a little stronger. But the magic, the specific magic that helped me break it down was the crisis question, or the core or central conflict. And I don't know, just really struck me. If you're starting out, and if I could go back to myself a year or almost a year ago now and say, here's this tool for thinking about it, and you really need to focus on the idea of core conflict, would I have received it? Would I have heard it? I can be a knucklehead when I'm learning things, because I kind of can't take it in until I'm ready to take it in. So on one hand, maybe it wouldn't have done any good. But on the other hand, if I had been able, and I don't know, but if I had been able to hear that and had focused on that and pushed myself to exercise around that, I think I would actually have done a much better job of capturing this really compelling story I had in my head. And as it stands today, because I didn't have that tool, some of that story I think is lost. It didn't end up in my breakdown. I suspect, and I haven't actually gone back and read episode 2 for quite some time, and I can't say I'm excited about it exactly because I think it's going to be mostly boring. I think I'll be a little surprised that there's some good stuff in there too, but I think I'll probably not. I'll be underwhelmed by a lot of it. But I think even though I wrote it out as in a script form, I've actually lost some of the magic that I had. So the lesson takeaway for me personally right now, and maybe for anybody else that's listening, is there's something really valuable in the idea of identifying what your central conflict is in the story or in one of the pieces as you drop down the structure of the story. Identify what that is, and it can really help you get the rest of the pieces pulled in. One last thing. I've got this really crazy idea that I've been pondering of, like, if you go through this tool and completely, let's imagine just like a single episode, just for the sake of keeping it in scope. Like, imagine that I had done this full breakdown of episode 101, and it's the story, the flow, everything is, there's still stuff in here that I haven't finished filling out yet, intermediate stuff, but there's like, I need a better tool to be able to just expand all. But let's say that I went through and did all this work that you're seeing here, broke it down as a beat artist. I don't know what to call it, the guy who creates the beats. Like, I'm feeling it, it's good, it's strong, it's there, and now it's time to turn it into a script. Well, what's interesting to me is you've kind of captured the magic of the story, the bones, I like to say, of the story, and anybody could write it. I think these guys, I didn't need the sub beats on those. Sorry. So you could take, like, say 5 different authors and give them this breakdown, all this data. They'd be able to wrap their head around the story flow. And let's assume, for the sake of argument, that they all read it and were like, yeah, this is good stuff. We could turn this into a screenplay. You would end up with 5 very different stories that were fundamentally about the same thing, but just told very differently. And that's so interesting from the concept of, like, those core pieces are the bones, but you could flesh out the skeleton to look like a very different person. You could put clothes on them. You could fix their hair or makeup or things that they cared about, even like personality traits. And there's so many things that would be different in the minds of the people fleshing the story bones out. And you'd end up with these 5 stories that fundamentally have the same core, the same flow, the same tension, the same all of that, and yet they're completely different at the same time. And I've gotten really fascinated. Like, I kind of want to find some people to volunteer and do that. Like, how different would it be? And I'm curious, Jefferson, I know you're going to watch this. Has anybody, is there a group of artists out there that's essentially done this? Wouldn't it be cool if somebody actually made those scripts into different movies and you could, like, see how... I mean, I know there's the same story that's been interpreted differently, but I think that's a little different. I'm saying actually the core is identical and it's fleshed out and made into a movie separately. It'd be interesting to see that, because I think it would really highlight the power of the bones themselves versus the power of the artistry of, dressing it. I don't know. Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about. That's where my brain's at. I'm hoping I get some more time to work on the Storybones tool, but I'm actually found myself able to move forward with the story development itself very slowly, but consistently, and that's feeling good. So thanks for tuning in to another episode of Bootstrap Cinema, where we don't know what we're doing, haven't known what we're doing, still don't know what we're doing, but we keep doing it anyway because someday maybe we'll have a clue. Alright, and how do I shut this thing down? Oh, you want to see a fun picture? This is my little brother. He thought it would be a good idea to go out on the ice, even though it was thin, as long as he had an air mattress. The ice broke and he jumped on the air mattress, and then our cat ran out to join him and popped it, and it was slowly deflating, and he was going to sink into icy water if I hadn't rescued him shortly after this picture was taken. Anyway, we're an interesting family. What can I say? See y'all later.